Thank you so much for being here. Mad Voters, we are hosting a racial justice panel tonight, and we are going to be talking to some people who have been in the action, and we could all really benefit from listening to their experiences. And I'm just so excited to be having this discussion with you tonight. So our panelists, I am going to actually have them introduce themselves one by one so that we can hear exactly who they are and why they're here. We're going to start with you, Nena. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, Chelsea. How are you?
I am excellent. Very excited for this.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. My name is Nena Bailey, and I am running for Allen County Council at Large. This is actually my first campaign, but it has been amazing. So again, I'm running for Allen County Council at Large, and I'm looking forward to representing the people of Allen County.
Thank you so much, Nena. It's so exciting to have you here. And, thank you so much for putting your hat in the ring. We need people like you to show up and give us somebody to believe in.
Thank you. That is exactly my goal, to be a voice for the people, a listening ear, and a watchful eye to make sure we're taking care of. Everyone is.
And those are the officials we need. Kennedy, please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for having me. I'm Kennedy Phillips, and I'm the program manager with Women4Change, and we continue to advocate for women's health, economic stability, and voter access.
Yes, thank you so much. We have enjoyed all the times that we've been able to work with you, Kennedy, and we're so excited to have you here tonight.
Same. Thank you.
Sean, please introduce yourself.
All right. Thank you guys for having me. My name is Sean Johnson. I'm the founder and CEO of the Growth Project. What we are is a political youth organization towards the youth, getting them into the political space and incentivizing the things that they do. Young kids are entrepreneurial minded. That is what keeps them going. And so if they are not getting anything out of the work that they're doing, they won't be doing it. So I try to provide that space for them and, allow them to step into their power.
That's amazing. And Sean, I've known you for a little bit now, and you never cease to amaze me with the projects that you're invested in and the steps that you take towards your goals. It's always very impressive, and just really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Well, we are going to be discussing racial justice and equity tonight, and I do have a few questions. I said earlier that I think that this conversation might guide itself a little bit, and that is okay. Please speak openly and freely. So, Nena, we're going to start with you. What brought you to the work that you are doing? In other words, what was your journey to the activism or political advocacy that you're doing?
Okay. Thanks for asking that question. What actually brought me to this point? Growing up as a child, I grew up in the South, a small town outside of Griffin, Atlanta. It's Griffin, Georgia. As a child, I would watch members of the NAACP, the civil rights organizations, and my parents were in those organizations, and my grandmother and my grandparents in the community. I actually saw them as a child marching for justice, marching for basic rights like voting rights and the ability to live where they wanted to live, and to go to schools and, seek the higher education that they so deserve. So really, I think as a child, that started me wanting to get involved, watching them and their determination. So that brought me to this point. I've worked on many campaigns, but this time I decided it was time for me to throw my hat in the ring to try to make a difference in the lives of others and in Allen County, which I really love this community. So I thought it would be a perfect opportunity to bring a little diversity to Allen County Council. So I'm excited about my journey and where it's going.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Sean, I'm going to repeat the question for you. What brought you to the work that you are doing? What was your journey like towards activism and advocacy?
So for me, it actually started in 2020. It was during the murder of George Floyd that really fueled me. Was down there in front of the courthouse every single day. It is where I met then County Councilwoman Sheila Curry Campbell, and from that standpoint, I got to really learn um, what it means to be an advocate, what it means to be an activist, because those are two different things. And once I really understood what that process was, I just went head first. I mean, I just unyielding, wanting to see a better world than what I was seeing. I'm 31 years old, and I feel like I'm back in 1945, and I was never even there. And that's an unfortunate time for all of us as young people. And so, being in the political space, I started to see a lack of, diversity with young people. And so, I kept hearing, what are we going to do to bring the young people? What can we do? What can we do? Well, I just decided I'm just going to do it myself. And so I got with other young people around the state, and we came together, and now we're bringing young people into the political space, and it's such a beautiful thing.
It's so important that we welcome younger people into this space. We have an opportunity to do that, and I'm really thankful for organizations that are doing that. We need all the help that we can get.
Yeah.
Kennedy, I would love to hear about your journey towards activism and advocacy.
So for me, it really started at a really early age because it came from me seeing my family very involved as well in the community. Also just being advocates for voting, as well as my grandfather was actually a part of the Black Panther Party. So really just having a lot of those political conversations with my family at a very young age, I was exposed to it. So I knew that there was always a space for me at the advocacy realm. And then specifically, I believe it was my junior year of high school. There were a lot of kids. I went to Cardinal Ritter High School. There were a lot of kids running around the school the year that Trump was running for office, and they were saying, build the wall. So even then, I knew that's not right. So I was the person who actually went and talked to our dean, like, oh, hey, what are we going to do about this? Because there's a lot of us who don't feel comfortable. Specifically, we had a large population of Latino students, and they didn't feel comfortable, and many of them voiced that. So just really advocating for that in that space, but then really coming into the space of where I am now with Women4Change. It all sparked from Roe v. Wade being overturned. And I had recently just moved back to Indianapolis because I went to school in North Carolina, and I was very well connected in North Carolina, but not so much in Indiana. So I was like, well, how do I get involved? Like, I see that they are taking a right away from me that I feel like I deserve. So how am I going, is my voice going to be heard in this space? So I saw that Women4Change was leading a lot of that along with other organizations as well. So I went to the State House, I went and marched, and then just following them, then I saw that they had a job opportunity available. So I was very glad that now I've taken this to a new step with actually being very hands-on and being a part of making those decisions. So.
Well, it sounds like you all saw a need and you stepped up to fill it. And I think that that is such an inspirational thing. And I hope that more people will do this and will step into this space with us. I am going to introduce my co-host, Amy Courtney. She is a longtime volunteer with MADVoters, and she's going to ask our second question.
Awesome. Yeah, I thought it was interesting that you mentioned like Roe v. Wade and George Floyd, because I think that is, both of those are, situations that brought a lot of people to this work and cross races. And, I think it's as much as horrible. They are good motivators and, you know, really bringing people together in the fight. And we definitely need more of that. So yeah, definitely thank you for those reflections. So I am curious, what are your, and you've mentioned some of these, but what are your biggest inspirations or role models in this work? And Kennedy, I want to start with you on this one. I think you have some good ones.
Yeah, so definitely my father or my grandfather, looking up to him, and a lot of people that were a part of the Kwanzaa community, which include Queen Mother Mihoreyah Jawanza. Many people may know her by that name, but I knew her as Mama Nini. She was almost like a second grandmother to me. But she was very involved in the space of advocating for Black youth in education and furthering their education, also just having the knowledge of their history and where they come from, rooting back to Africa. And then also she was a co-chair for the National Coalition of the Blacks for Reparation in America. So those are two of my biggest people that I've looked up to, that I continue to have, or that I have had many of conversations with, that had to do with this space and just the future of the US, the future of Indiana, just the future of policy. What does that look like? So just having a lot of people that have done so much in the community of Indianapolis, and being able to look up to them and see that they are from the community, but they're doing a lot of work actually in the community. It's very hands-on. They're continuing to talk to people in the space, like even at this moment. And that was one thing that Mama Nini did up until the day that she passed. So I definitely look up to her, and I want to continue the legacy that she started, and just reach a new community. There are always youth that will learn, and that we need to talk to just in the future to continue a lot of the work that was started before we even came to the table.
Oh yeah, I was right. Those were a couple good ones. Yeah, what a gift to just have such amazing role models around you like that. Let's go over to Nena next, please.
All righty. So the person that, would you like to ask the question, or did you?
Yeah, I could if you wanted again, but just your biggest inspirations or role models in this work.
Okay, all righty. My biggest inspiration and role models was my grandmother and my mother, but mostly my grandmother, because she grew up in a time where there was no, you couldn't even drink out of the same water fountain, or attend the same schools. But her determination and her involvement with the NAACP and SNCC and different organizations in the South, she actually marched with Martin Luther King and the Reverend Hosea Williams to bring about change. She taught her daughters, which was my mother, and her 8 children, which were all girls, to be proud of who you are. Do not be ashamed of the color of your skin. Never let anybody tell you what you cannot do. If you're not invited to the table, she would say, pretty much bring your own chair. She was such an inspiration as far as the community, and people looked up to her, and for her advice and just wanting the basic things. They registered so many people to vote. And young people today need to know the importance of voting. In order to make change, you have to vote. If you do not vote, then you're letting someone else make a decision for you. We saw exactly what voting can do here in Fort Wayne and throughout the state, where we're electing women mayors. So my grandmother would be so proud to know that I am actually running for public office to try to make a difference in the lives of others. So that's my inspiration. She was a powerful little lady. Her name is
that gives me
Dorothy Farley.
goosebumps. That's awesome. Wow, I'm impressed. Okay, Sean, you've got a couple good stories there to follow up. What are your biggest inspirations in the work?
One was my cousin Bryce. He was just his charisma, just the things that he taught me. I mean, he was more like an uncle. He was my barber. I mean, he was always there. Any event that I ever had, he was there. He passed away about 4 or 5 years ago, and I carry him right here every single day because he was just the one who was the motivator, the go getter. And secondly, my great great grandfather, like learning his legacy and reading his books that he wrote was just phenomenal. And then being able to, I think I'm privileged to be able to essentially pick the brain of an individual who lived 100 plus years before I was even thought of. And truly know and believe that I do belong in the space that I'm in, because my family did it hundreds of years before I did. So those two right there, like keep me going every day. And I mean, I can just go back and read my great great grandfather's journal, and to get the motivation I may or may not even need for the day. And then I have to say, lastly, my mom. You know, she raised me in an insane world. Um, it was just her, multiple jobs. Um, that allowed me to do different things that I'm able to, do now. So, without my mom, I would not be the man that I am today. For Mother's Day and Father's Day, I call my mom. And so she will always be that person that will listen to all the crazy stories I tell her, and she will always have my back. So without them, there would be no Sean Johnson and there would be no Growth Project.
You guys have some amazing role models. This is something that I wish everybody could have. And, how lucky are we to have those people that we could look up to and who were able to teach us and set us on a good path for learning more for ourselves. Amazing. And really great stories, by the way. Very interesting history here. You all have, there's a rich history behind what each of you are doing. And I think that that's, really amazing. And, not everybody has a rich, deep history story that goes along with why they're in this space. And that's okay too. But I think, looking inside for our own deep stories is very important. So if you're wanting to get into this space, you don't have to have a great story. You start your own story, and all of you have started something amazing. So our next question is, did you always know that you wanted to do this work? And you guys all kind of answered this a little bit, just about like how you got into this work. So I would actually like to take a moment to go through each of you and ask you if there's anything that you would like to share about working in the space that you're working in, anything that you would like to share with people who may not know or understand this experience. And Sean, I'm going to start with you this time.
I guess I'd like to say, when you come into this space, know why you're coming into this space, because it's very easy to get lost. Again, because there's a difference between an activist and an advocate. Those are two different realms, and I feel like sometimes some of us, especially the younger ones coming into this world, we get confused and we get burned out real fast. And so I would always encourage anybody, simply know exactly what you want to do. Is it an issue that you are super passionate about? Fine. All right. Let's find that lane or that person for you to talk to. I was kind of looking through here, being nosy at the guest list, and I see Shelly Yoder. Right. So when you think of something like that, like we're talking about, if I'm talking to a younger woman and she says to me, like, I'm tired of this issue on the pink tax. I'm tired of dealing with this. Okay, cool. Well, let's go to the state house and let's talk to one of our legislators that are fighting in this. Or are you tired of voting rights being under attack? Okay, so let's get with an organization then that can help you in this space. I think really knowing and buckling down on who and what you are will allow you to control your narrative, which will allow you a bit of peace of mind in the space.
Really great advice there. And very important. I hope that everybody listened to that. Taking care of ourselves in these spaces is very important. Burnout is 100% real. Even if you think you have the greatest attitude and the greatest work ethic, burnout is real for everybody. So take care of yourself, friends, for sure. Nena, same to you. Is there anything that you would like to share, or would you like to, talk more about how you got into things? I don't want to take that away from anybody, even though we kind of got some of those answers, but, anything you'd like us to know?
What I would like for people to know, especially for young adults, and I'd like to give a shout out to Sean for bringing younger people into the space as well. Oftentimes we don't listen to the younger people. As I've been campaigning, I've started to ask people, what is it that you're wanting, from your council person? How can I best help you? I want to be the person to listen to people's ideas. And as a candidate or a politician, I often find that there's promises that are not always kept. We're spewing things that we're going to do without really knowing what it is that the people want and what they need. So what I would encourage young people or individuals in general, find something that you're passionate about. Find something that you can bring your ideas to the table. You have to have a passion. You have to love people, because these positions, they're not paying like mega bucks. Most of the time, we're doing this because we love people and that we want to be a voice and we want to help. So find your voice, find out what it is that you love, and how can you bring your ideas to the table that will help someone, whether it is, as far as I'm concerned, is going into my candidacy, mental health issues, which are very important to me. Oftentimes in our community, African Americans, we are afraid sometimes to go to get the mental help that we need. We don't always, when we're sick, we'll go to a doctor, but when there's mental health issues, we push it aside. So I just want for people to know that there is help out there. There is people that are willing to listen. Don't be afraid to ask for the help you need on this journey, whether it's on a campaign or in a political action group. Just let people know that you're there, and don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it.
Absolutely. Great advice. And for those of us already in these spaces, we can work harder to make room for others who are wanting to come into this space. There is enough work for everybody, and we need to work together for sure. So Kennedy, would you like to expand on, more about your work and things that you would like people to know about it?
So I will piggyback a little bit off of Nena, actually. Know like where you want to be in this space, because I think that as a younger person, I'm 24, so I'm relatively young, and I thought I knew where I wanted to go in this space, and I didn't necessarily know. But now I'm just now finding that, and actually knowing the history, going back and looking at different policies, exploring legislation, is something that's new to me. So I think if that's an area of interest, then definitely just know the history and the places of where you can go back and look for that information. And specifically, I think that voter access has always been something that I have really been focused on. And now that it's getting back to another voting season, I'm just really excited to be able to get out and speak to those people who have not voted before, or giving information to those who've been recently incarcerated, letting them know, or not recently, but previously incarcerated and have recently been out and letting them know that their voice is still needed and that their voice should be heard, and that there are a lot of barriers that are being put in place because people feel like their voice should not be heard, but that's because their voice really truly matters. And when we show up in numbers, then that changes a lot of things. So I think that just finding that space, focusing on that space, because once you are able to gain a lot of knowledge, then you're able to talk to many people, including my friends that are my age that aren't necessarily interested in voting, and just letting them know information about it that they may have not known previously. So.
Amazing. Yes, I love the work that you guys are doing at Women for Change. It's really important work, and I'm really thankful for you guys being in these spaces for sure. In terms of Indiana and your experiences here in Indiana, what kind of setbacks have you experienced regarding racial justice and equity? And with this, what are your future goals? And Nena, we're going to start with you this time.
Okay, you said what type of setbacks have I seen in Indiana since I've been here? I moved back here in 2014. I have seen that there is growth. You know, there has been a lot of growth since I've been here. I've seen, 3 different African-American female mayors elected this year within our state. I do think that there needs to be a little bit more justice reform. Oftentimes I see that African Americans definitely have been getting longer sentences for similar crimes. So I would just like to see a more equitable justice system. I don't, for instance, there are oftentimes minor criminal infractions turn into long-term criminals because there's no help for those people once they're leaving the jail systems. There need to be some form of facility within the jail that would address issues like mental health issues and substance abuse disorders. Oftentimes, I think we're putting people back out into the world without finding out what is causing them this problem. So I just feel like there needs to be some form of rehabilitation in the justice system, in the jail system, because as an Allen County Council woman, the jail would be part of the department that I would be over. So my goal would be to work to stop the recidivism rate within our county. We don't need to build bigger jails. That is not always the solution. Finding out what is causing people to re-enter the system, make a way to help them when they're leaving instead of throwing them out there and expecting change. We have to be the voice that help them to overcome, their issues. But I have seen progress. And again, by nominating and African-American mayors, women. So there is progress, but there is still work to do.
Absolutely. And, I think that that's really important work, working with these, the recidivism rates and things like that. And I know there are programs in Indiana that people are starting, and fingers crossed, we're going to see some really good results from these things, because then other places can adopt these practices, and together we can all just make a real difference in this. So thank you so much for sharing that. Kennedy, again, what kind of setbacks have you seen regarding racial justice and equity here in Indiana? And do you have any goals for, changing that in the future?
Yes, so specifically in the maternal health space, just the rates of maternal and infant mortality, how high they are specifically for Black women in comparison to our counterparts. And I think that that's something that is a state issue that we have to continue to work on, because we see many other states that are just literally across the highway in Ohio, doing things a lot different than how we are now. So really investing in that space, because there are so many different doctors leaving the state of Indiana just due to Roe v. Wade being overturned itself. But making sure that we have the access, making sure that we have those people that are advocating for Black women specifically, because many of those deaths have been preventable. And that is from a year up until a year after the birth of the baby. So I would say specifically in that maternal realm, but then also just in voter access as well. So I came from North Carolina, well, I'm from Indiana. I went to school in North Carolina, and I was very involved in campaigns in North Carolina. So just seeing how they did things there, it's a lot different than how things are done here in the state of Indiana. They are definitely letting everyone know that it is voting season. It's time to get out to vote. They're very invested in their community, letting them know that it is that season, as well as with the ID requirements. They're a lot different than they are here as well. I was able to vote with just the student ID, rather than here in the state of Indiana. Laws have now changed, and then you actually have to have a state ID, or you have to have a bill in your name at your household. And for younger voters, that's a lot harder than it is from people that have been here, or for people who don't necessarily reside in a home, thinking of just homeless people. That's something that we can definitely work on in the state, just making it more equitable for people to be able to vote, and a lot easier, because there's so much that we're doing here that I just don't necessarily agree with. But yeah, just continue to advocate for that, honestly. So.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of things that hold a lot of voters back here, and we should really be constantly empowering people. And, states that do that stuff have a much better voter turnout rate, and that we have a problem with that here. So hopefully you can bring some of that North Carolina magic to Indiana with you, and we can really get this going. Sean, and I know that you have seen a lot of the same stuff as far as like voting access and stuff like that, but I'd love to hear from you what kind of setbacks you've dealt with and, overcome.
I mean, there's been, just as far as the state of Indiana alone, major setbacks. We're talking about just overall healthcare, right? We're talking about an education system that's literally, it's literally being weaponized. Like our children are not able to learn in a proper sense. We see, I've seen a huge exodus of, Black men in the political space. And it's something that, we're not talking about, but it's a real problem. When you look at just another group of individuals who are not given the same, are not allowed to be themselves in a particular space. We see it time and time again. And, how do I, get over it? I don't necessarily think there's a getting over it. I think there's just continuing to be uniquely who I am, regardless of who's in the room. I'm proud of the skin that I'm in. I'm happy to be a Black man in any space that I go into, even if I am the only Black man in that space. I'm comfortable with who I am, because I had a strong Black mother who raised me to be uniquely who I am in this space. And so I think that, we need to continue to have the tough conversations. Things need to continue to be called out. We cannot, the only way we get over things is simply by talking about it. We have to have those open and honest conversations, and we have to be willing to hold ourselves accountable, especially when we're in leadership roles, especially when we're working with other people, especially in the political space. Whether I don't care what your party is. I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican. There's still like racism and things like that. They don't have a party. It's a people thing. And we have to do a better job in engaging people in that, and simply saying, that's not okay. This is not the space for this. Have a nice day. And I think until we start doing that, we will continue to have different levels of microaggressive behavior going on, whether it's party politics or it's just, behind closed doors. It'll continue to happen. But I do know that there are some great people out here doing great work. Obviously, the Mad Voters, right? Like I've known you guys for years. You've done nothing but create a space for all people, including Black men, to come in and have those conversations and feel welcome. So, you guys continue doing the great work and making this a space for us to come in and be who we are.
Thank you, Sean. And we're incredibly grateful to have been able to work with you over the years. We love having you in our space. And it sounds like what we really need here is everybody's just asking for some accountability, right?
That's it.
It's pretty, I don't want to simplify it and say it's not a big complicated web that we're all stuck in, but if we're going to simplify it, accountability is where it's at. Everybody taking accountability and being willing to unpack things. And speaking of unpacking things, there was actually a question that I got, and I want to talk about this because I think that this is an important thing to talk about. So the question was, why do we always gather Black folks for racial justice talks? We are not the ones denying the progress of others. I think it lets white/other candidates off the hook to have hard conversations. And from Mad Voters' perspective for this specific racial justice panel, we wanted to invite Black activists and candidates into this space to hear from them and not have their voices being overshadowed by a white person who may be working in this space but hasn't lived the experience. So that was our thought process with this. We never want anybody to feel like they're being like a token minoritized person ever at Mad Voters. And so, we hope that we, with our actions, get that across to our followers. But it is something that I think is important to talk about. And I would actually love to hear from our panelists on their thoughts on this as well. Sean, since we just spoke and you're still off mute, I would like to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, so I definitely understand the question, because this is a question that I ask myself. But I do think that one, you got to start somewhere. And now for other folks, the action term or the phrase would be, we've been stuck in the space for over 400 and some odd years. 100% get it and understand. But I do know that people are at different levels. The conversation I can have with Chelsea is not the same conversation I can have with a person in Jay County. It's just not the same conversation. So I think that opening that door for folks to say, you know what, like, I'm not going to get beat up or beat down. This person would genuinely allow me to ask questions, because there are some people who are just completely ignorant to racial norms, like, and as shocking as that is, and as frustrating as it is, because it is very frustrating to deal with. Like, I'm telling, it's very frustrating. But I always try to give someone a bit of grace, Now, if you're just off the wall, like doing the most, saying the most, absolutely not. Like, we're not even going to have that debate or that conversation. But I do a pretty good job of feeling a vibe from a person, and knowing who people are. I think the more time we spend getting to know a person and break down a lot of those things, can, we move forward a bit. Now, it's not going to ever go away, but I do believe that through certain conversations with certain individuals, we can make a little headway and gain more allies, and then use those allies to continue to fight the fight. Um, that's just where I stand on that.
I appreciate your input, as I appreciate everybody's input, including the people who are here listening. Everybody's input is very important. We want to hear and learn from as many people as possible. And Kennedy and Nena, if either of you have anything to add to this, please, we'd love to hear from you.
I would really just piggyback off of what Sean said as well. I really truly understand the question, but I feel like we continue to have to stay in this space to be the ones, because we do have the experience and we're the ones that are bringing that experience that we deal with on a daily basis. At the end of the day, we're still Black. So we have to continue to have a lot of those hard conversations that many people just truly don't understand, because you may be an ally, but that's completely different than living the true experience.
And excuse me, and Chelsea, I just wanted to speak a little bit. When I got the invitation to do this panel, it was a little, I wasn't really sure how to handle it, because I know oftentimes when we talk about racial justice, people are afraid to talk about it. They're afraid to talk about issues that African Americans face that maybe my friends, my white counterparts, they don't face those same issues. So when you open dialogue like this for the community, it allows us to kind of hear each other instead of drowning out our voices with our own opinion. Sometimes we really aren't given the platform to speak and tell, how we're feeling about different issues. And if we do, then it comes off as we're a problem, or, you're fighting the system. And that's not the case. We just really want to be heard. We want to listen to your opinion, everyone's opinion about different things that face not just people of Allen County, but Americans. We face the same issues. We deal with the same things. We just have to be a little bit more considerate to each other's opinion and not drown it out, because that's what we think. Many times we listen, but we don't listen for understanding. We listen to respond. So if we started listening to one another, again, not to respond, but to really try to understand what that person is saying. Not that you're going to agree with every single issue or statement that I may make, but listen, maybe a person will learn something. Maybe they'll learn how to be a little bit more racially sensitive to your fellow Americans. We just need to listen to each other sometimes, not feel like we're working against you or another ethnicity because we have an opinion. And I wanted to just say, oftentimes I am the only African American in the room. When I started my campaign, and it was a little hard to even talk about this, but I went to a campaign kickoff for someone that was starting back in February. And I was, again, the only African American in the room. I'm just starting my campaign. We're sitting at the table, a young lady, and I love this young lady, but I was a little bit taken aback by her statement. She said to me, "You campaign, but don't show your Black face." And I'm like, okay, I'm Black. Every room that I show up in, I'm going to be Black. Most people accept me for who I am, but that was a little disturbing to me that someone wanted me to not show my Black face during my campaign. People are going to know who I am, because when I show up in the room, you're going to know that I'm Nena Bailey, an African-American woman who not only stand for African Americans, but I stand for all people. I want equitable access for all people, whether it is in Monroeville or Huntertown, or everybody deserves a fair shot. And again, I'm going to bring my opinion and my Black face pretty much wherever I go.
Well, I am so glad that you didn't, that comment didn't cloud your judgment as far as moving forward, because we need your voice in policy, and Allen County is incredibly lucky to have you. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. That was a very personal thing, and you know, the MADVoters organization, we want to invite everybody in. We want to build this trusting relationship with everybody, and we want you all to know that these are questions we're willing to answer for ourselves, and they're questions that we're willing to ask, because all of us here are very comfortable with getting uncomfortable. And I think that that's really, really important for a lot of people. And before we move on, Mihoreyah has joined us, and I'm going to, Mihoreyah, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm sorry. I am so sorry. I had it scheduled for Central Time. I'm so sorry.
We're so sorry too, Mihoreyah, but
7, I'm like, okay, I got it. 7 o'clock. I set the alarm and then I joined and everybody's talking. I'm like, oh my God, how did I do that? I'm so sorry. Please charge it to my head and not my heart.
That's okay. It happens. We completely understand. But since you're here, I would really love it if you'd be willing to introduce yourself to everybody and give everybody kind of an idea of what got you into the advocacy or activism that you are in right now.
Sure. My name is Mihoreyah Thomas. I am currently a member of the Black Labor Week Movement Project. Our founder, Ephraim E.J. Jenkins, he is the founder and visionary. Wonderful guy. Right now, he is just trying to uplift the community of Gary, underserved communities. We volunteer. We've been doing kickoffs with the mayor, Eddie Melton, cleaning up the city of Gary. We've been doing other things as cooking breakfast for senior citizens, feeding the homeless, food drives, all kind of things. Currently, I am the first African-American president for my local union, just elected a few months ago. So that has been very stressful and overwhelming. So I do have a lot going on right now, but please forgive me for being late. I'm so sorry.
That is totally okay. And thank you guys so much for what you're doing in Gary. I know you guys have been overlooked so much.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's so refreshing to see the people kind of standing up and being like, you know, enough is enough, and we're going to take care of our communities. And
yes. And how I got started with the activism, it was just a simple ask. Me and EJ are actually in the same union, USW Steelworkers, and I would see him from time to time. And then one day he just asked me, hey, would you like to volunteer on the committee, you know, come to the meeting? And since then, I've hit the ground running, volunteering, getting our faces out there, doing whatever he needs me to do for that committee. So that it was just a simple ask. He said, hey, can you? And I said yes. And sometimes that's all it takes. You never know what you could get people to do if you just simply ask. Because had he not asked me, I would still volunteer, but not in the magnitude that I'm volunteering at now. So when he asked, that's all it took. And sometimes I think we fail to realize if we would just ask people, we could get people on board to do things just because you opened that door. And I appreciate him for this opportunity.
Absolutely. If he hadn't said anything to you, was there any desire to want to be active in something
Yes,
like this?
well, it was, but not in this magnitude. You know, I've been in the labor movement for 16 years. I will volunteer here and there just when I had time, but now I feel like it's necessary. So I make time to volunteer. I make it a priority opposed to just doing it when I feel like it.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, everybody has to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, yes,
Um,
absolutely, absolutely.
That's amazing. So I'm going to ask you this question because I think it's really important to this panel, and
Okay.
I really don't want to miss out on hearing what you have to say. In terms of working in Indiana, what progress or setbacks have you seen regarding racial justice and equity?
I feel that, especially in the city of Gary, I feel like that is an underserved community. I feel like more needs to be done there as far as preparing kids for college, getting them ready, more preschool education. More needs to be poured into the education. I feel like that is the foundation in which we would build more responsible and more healthy children if they are educated from a younger age, like starting at preschool. If we can get them in a classroom, get them adjusted to learning and get them the necessary things that they need. And even times at school, like a lot of kids, that's the only time they do eat is while they're at school. So if they're in school at an early age, maybe we could start there. That way they can at least get 2 meals a day, because I know that a lot of kids do go without food, and I think we are far from it. A lot of us don't realize how many kids don't eat on a regular basis, and those things are necessary to build healthy individuals at such a young age.
Absolutely. And I know in Gary, you guys just recently got control of your schools back.
Yes, yes.
And that was a long fight.
A long fight.
Yeah. And I want to make it clear to everybody that the things that have been talked about are things that we can get through policy.
Yes.
Access to the education for younger kids and the meals and things like this. These are things we are allowed to ask for.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that you all will continue asking for them, just like our panelists have clearly been working towards fixing these injustices and these inequities in these spaces. And so I really just want to really push that home, that it starts with policy and in our own backyards.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much. And I have another question. Let me pull this up really quick. This was from somebody in the chat. So I'm actually going to start with you. Is it Mihoreyah?
Mihoreyah, like Peoria, but Mihoreyah.
Mihoreyah. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'm going to start with you. And the question is, how do you in your everyday life deal with very polite neighbors who continue to support those who would undermine your rights and freedoms? It's a very personal question, maybe.
It really is. Say the question, read the question one more time for me.
Okay. And let me say this, if it's not something that anybody feels comfortable answering, I completely understand. We can kind of do a whoever wants to answer it can answer it. Because it is a little personal. How do you in your everyday life deal with very polite neighbors who continue to support those who would undermine your rights and freedoms?
I feel that that is their right. So I don't impose on their rights, but I continue to be who I am and show up as my authentic self and just remind them, like, or have a conversation. I feel like it's your right to do as you feel because we have choice, but also it's my duty to just remind you that this person undermines who I am or what I stand for, or based on my race, these are the policies that don't align with what I believe. And I feel that we can do that and have a conversation and still be polite. I don't have to go to war with you because you have a difference of opinion. I can just state my facts, you can state your facts, and we can agree to disagree. And I feel that sometimes, even if we don't agree, that doesn't mean we have to be enemies. That's what I was saying.
I appreciate that. And I like that last part, that maybe if we can all work towards the things that we do agree on, like some basic, human decency and,
Absolutely.
like
Absolutely.
if we can work towards these, then we can deal with the other stuff later after we've
The minor
conversations.
Yeah, we can have a conversation about the major, and come to a meeting of the minds and some type of agreement. But just because we don't agree, that does not make you an enemy because you don't agree with me.
I appreciate that. Would anybody else like to answer this question?
Yeah. So for me, I'm very situational. I'm a very situational type of person. When it comes to racism, I will not budge. I will not agree. If somebody is supporting an individual who has shown himself to be more socially uh, racist, those are things that I cannot. I can't be on your team for that. It's just that particular situation. It just makes me cringe as a human. But when it comes to fist letters, different things like that, we can agree to disagree. Because if you agree that you want your student to go to private school, and I agree that I want mine to go to public school, that's your choice. That's your right. I'm not gonna beat you down or consider you a bad person when it comes to stuff like that. But just purely the piece on the racism piece is where I just draw a nail in the wall and say no, because continuing to support things like that are making it okay. And to make something like that okay is to continue to hold us back, not only as Black people, but just humans in general, because it just shows us that we don't care about the person next to us or the person behind us. And so, but I always am willing to have the conversation. I would much rather know where a person stands. That way I can go in a different direction. That way, again, if I know, I don't have to, I can say, okay, I know this individual over here is not going to like me because of how I look. Cool. That's their choice. I'm not even going to stress myself. I'm going to go up here and have a conversation and talk to Kelly because I know Kelly loves me. And so, I mean, that's just how I base situations.
Understandable that it would have to be situationally. So, I mean, it does sound like there is encouragement to continue to have the hard and possibly uncomfortable situations, unless it's something you just know, like this person is not going to hear me.
Yeah.
And that sometimes is what's best for our mental health, is to not even deal with those people.
Yep.
And Kennedy and Nena, if either of you would like to add anything to that, please feel welcome to.
I really do agree with both statements. Everybody has their own opinion about how they feel about a situation. I've heard neighbors say different things about this person or that person. You just really have to, you can listen to that person's opinion without necessarily agreeing with them or, saying that they're wrong, because everybody, again, has an opinion. Just because you don't think the same way that I do doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means that we're on different paths. And as Sean was saying, if you find that you totally have somebody that's completely racist or who doesn't really want to be bothered with you, and you may not want to be bothered with them with that same attitude, just remove yourself. Stay away from it, If you can, just move away from it, Do not participate in putting someone else down. Just because your neighbor might have a problem with that person doesn't mean that you would have to participate in that same feeling. Everybody's an individual. Everybody has a right to think the way they want. We still should listen to what people are saying, because sometimes it could change your train of thought. It's hard to get through. And a few people were saying, being a candidate on a panel like racial justice panel could deter people from voting for you, or whatever the reason. A person, if they're more than likely, if they're a racist, they're not going to vote for me anyway. I'm going to find the people that I can communicate with, that I can tell them what I stand for. Hopefully they'll believe in my message and not base it on the color of my skin, but base it on the content of my character.
Absolutely. And I hope that we can get there someday. I really, really do. And I know everybody on this call is going to keep going and keep trying to push that forward and make this a better, more respectful, safer space. Before I move on, Kennedy, would you like to add anything?
So I'd say that we should just continue on with civil discourse, which is something that we see even at a national level that many of our legislators don't necessarily participate in, but it's something that we should still respect the other side, whether we agree with it or not. And having those hard conversations is necessary every day. And it is something that we have to go through even when we don't want to. But I do say that it does draw a line somewhere. Like I've definitely had conversations or people using derogatory terms. That's where it draws the line for me. But I think that a lot of times we can continue to have uncomfortable conversations, even in the space of those who believe in abortion, those who don't. Those are very hard conversations to have, but I think that you genuinely have to point out different points, and give them your reasoning behind why you're on this side, and ask genuine questions and actually try to listen, whether you agree with it or not. So.
Yeah, something that we say at MADVoters is we try to meet people where they are. Mm-hmm. The more personal your conversation is, you may not change their mind, but there's a good chance you made them think. And that's the first step. And it sounds like everybody's kind of on that same messaging that we want to get this message across to people, as kindly and respectfully as we can. But, there are boundaries, and we're going to maintain our health and our well-being. And I think that these are all very important messages for all of us on this call today. Mihoreyah, are you still here?
I'm still here, yes.
Okay, awesome. So before we close things out, this is something that you didn't get a chance to really talk about.
Okay.
But I would love to know from your perspective and in your expertise and experience, what advice do you have for younger or newer activists trying to get into this same kind of work?
I would say the first thing would be to educate yourself as to what they are passionate about. So once you find your passion, then that can kind of drive where you want to place yourself. And then find your community with like-minded people to help you start somewhere. You have to start somewhere, but make sure you start small. Don't try to take on a lot of projects at once. Get good at something small before you try to do something big. Then, of course, stay persistent, be inclusive, make sure you don't leave anybody out, make sure you are familiar with diversity so you can speak to all people, and then just make sure you're big on your integrity. Make sure that you keep your commitments and keep your promises. If you say you're going to be somewhere, people are counting on you, and make sure you're on time. Even though I was late today, I'm so sorry. But I feel so bad, but those are just a few things that I think are important in order to be successful in whatever you do, whether it's being an advocate or just everyday life. Those are things that will make you successful if you do at least those few things first.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Showing up is kind of half the battle, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you can show up, then you can make a difference.
100%. So thank you again. And I'm going to go through to remind everybody who you guys are. So thank you again, Nena Bailey, candidate for Allen County Council at large. That is up north. If you are in that northeastern area, get involved. There is a lot of good happening there. Super excited. Same with Gary. There is some good things happening, getting some power back in this city, taking control of the situation, a beautiful thing to see. Mihoreyah Thomas, who is here with us from Black Labor Week Project. Thank you so much. Sean Johnson, also one of our Fort Wayne warriors up in the Northeast, here from the Growth Project. And Kennedy Phillips, here from Women4Change, who we have had the honor and privilege of working with a few times, and can't wait to continue this working relationship with each of you. And I am so grateful for your time tonight and for everybody who came here to listen and ask questions. We appreciate you. We hope that you will continue showing up to these conversations, learning and asking good questions, not just of our panelists, but of our team. I think we all need to be held to certain standards and held accountable for things. And we can't do that if we don't have these conversations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And Amy, I think you are gonna close
so
us
I just want to pass along my thanks also. This was a really great panel. We are hoping that this will be the first of, many more conversations. And, we've been talking about how to have some of the harder conversations too, and to, have more conversations with white people about racism. So, definitely appreciate the conversation tonight and getting to, center and celebrate Black voices in this space. But we definitely, this is the first of many, we hope. So thank you so much. It was a pleasure hearing from all of you and your experiences with racial justice and equity. Just want to give a quick shout out and reminder that if you would like to learn more about our MADVoters Verified Politicians, or MVPs as we call them, and get more information about the 2024 election, you can check out MADVoters on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and of course, madvoters.org. So thank you so much. This has been fun.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate you all.
have a wonderful night, and we will be in contact with you when we get your YouTube video uploaded. We want people to hear what you have to say. We're going to be sharing it, and we can't wait to talk to you next time. And shout out to Nena Bailey for being one of those MVPs.
Yes, thank you for giving me that designation. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We believe
and
in
you guys,
you.
and the graphics was beautiful, must I say.
Thank you. Thank you so much.